Hey guys, what's up? It's Drew here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the DFA hand cannon. This is a new one from the Nightfall rewards, and if you're wondering if the grind is worth it, I'll be talking all about it and breaking the weapon down in this review. So let's get right into it. First and foremost, just glance over our archetype. It's an adaptive hand cannon, fires at 140 RPM. Of course, that means it has 84 impact to go with that. 61 crit and 45 body is the damage you can be expecting out of it. It has a 1.3 second optimal time to kill with 1 crit 3 body up until 6 resilience, where it becomes a 2 crit 2 body, and then a 1.73 base time to kill. So if you miss the necessary headshots, it'll go to a 5 body shot kill. So now let's talk about the perks on the DFA, and there's a lot of really interesting perks on this weapon that we can break down. First off, let's start with the barrel options. So we have Arrowhead Break, which I think this is the only hand cannon in the game to have this barrel option. I'm not 100% sure though, so don't quote me on it. But it's one of the few to have this perk on it, which is really great because it controls recoil greatly and increases your handling. So it acts as a more impactful kinetic counterbalance mod, almost is how I'd put it. The recoil on it was much more vertical and predictable or consistent, which I really liked. And on the side, it increased the handling from 48 to 57, which is a nice touch as well. But mostly, the reason why you'd want to use this barrel option is because it makes the recoil pattern almost entirely vertical, and with more consistent recoil, you get a little bit more consistent performance, and it allows you to hit shots a lot more regularly and consistently, which, as I mentioned, is something I really enjoyed about using the hand cannon. Next, we have polygonal rifling though, which increases stability from 59 to 68, it becomes 72 at the high end with the stability masterwork if you do run that. And what I noticed with this was spacing between each of the shots became a lot tighter. And it was similar to high-end stability hand cannons like the Allegro or even Dire Promise, which have pretty high stability stats, which is great. It allows this weapon to be a top-tier stability hand cannon. The only downside to this is that I noticed that the recoil pattern while using this barrel option becomes far more inconsistent and sporadic. So you get tighter packed together shots, but a more inconsistent recoil pattern. Lastly, we have extended barrel, which increases range and decreases handling. So it increases the range from 60 to 68. In actual gameplay, when I measured it, it only translates to about 1, maybe 2 meters extra optimal range, but it does make hitting shots at range more reliable, and you experience less quote-unquote ghost bullets, as some would call it. The recoil pattern with this changes once again, and it seems to move up and to the left, which is a little awkward. Maybe some of you guys might enjoy that a little bit more, try it out, but to me, it was a bit awkward, so I don't really like using this. Extended barrel also decreases the handling from 48 to 39, which is a little low, so some might not like this as well. Out of all the barrel options, my pick is Arrowhead Break. Second pick would probably be polygonal rifling. But these recoil patterns that they do provide does completely change when using even just one kinetic counterbalance mod, which we'll talk about later in the video. None of these barrel options are the wrong answer, I think, but I think overall the most consistent one is Arrowhead Break. But again, no objective opinion with these. You really have to try them all out and find out which one you like and feels the best to you. Nextly, we have our magazine perks, which we don't have to spend too much time on. It's Accurized Rounds and Drop Mag. Accurized Rounds gives you a good range increase. Drop Mag greatly decreases the reload speed, but wastes ammo left in the mag. I think there's no question here, Accurized Rounds is the better option. Maybe if you're trying to maximize on Rampage, which we'll take a look in a second, you'd want Drop Mag, but the reload speed on this weapon isn't bad to begin with. You waste ammo, and you're sacrificing a pretty good range increase, which overall affects your consistency. So to me, it's no question Accurized Rounds is the best option. So now we can move on to our trait perks, which is when it gets interesting, because this weapon is the first 140 hand cannon to have Rampage on it. So we can take a look at how that affects things. But for those of you that don't know, Rampage lasts for 3.5 seconds. It was recently buffed from 3 to 3.5 seconds, and it provides a 10% increase in damage per kill while it's active. And that can stack 3 times, leading up to about a 30% increase in damage. So now let's look specifically at how this works with the DFA being a 140 RPM hand cannon. So firstly, let's take a look at our best case scenarios with Rampage, which means every shot you shoot and deal damage with is being affected by the Rampage damage buff, and we're going to be looking at the best kill scenario for each Rampage buff. First, our damage values with a 140 hand cannon and Rampage with 1 stack is 67 damage to the head 49.5 to the body. Rampage times 2 is 73 to the head, 54 to the body, and Rampage times 3 is 79 to the head and 58.5 to the body. So with Rampage times 1, in a best case scenario, we're going to hit 3 shots for 67 damage, all of them being crits. That totals 201 damage, and again, that's 3 crits, allowing us to kill in 0.87 seconds. That lets us 3-tap any resilience level with a 100% crit ratio. With Rampage times 2, we can get 2 headshots, so 73 times 2, that equals 146, and then add 54 damage to that because that's the damage for a body shot at Rampage times 2, which equals 200. Now, I believe that this is the best kill scenario that you'd be aiming for with a stack, and that'll equal a 2 crit, 1 body, 3 tap, again, 0.87 seconds, but this only lasts till 9 resilience, otherwise, of course, you have to go for the 3 crits, but again, you can 3 tap with a 66% crit ratio. With Rampage times 3, you can actually go for 1 headshot, 79 damage, plus 2 bodies, which is 58.5 times 2. That totals up to 196 damage. So you can actually 1 crit, 2 body, Destiny 1 style for 0.87 second kill, and that 33% crit ratio will work on enemies with 5 resilience and lower. In all scenarios though, if you do not hit the 3 tap with Rampage active, it does become a 4-shot kill, and the best case scenario would be 4 body shots for a kill. As I said though, those are best case on paper scenarios. Those scenarios, in my opinion, are very unlikely to happen regularly. So we're going to take a look at a different combination of your almost worst case scenarios with Rampage, and that's with 1 Rampage shot in every kill. So with 1 stack of Rampage, and this will probably be the most common scenario that you encounter with Rampage, you can get 1 shot in someone for 67 damage to the head, plus 2 other headshots with 61 damage each, which is the normal damage of a 140 hand cannon. That'll total 189 damage in 3 shots, which actually does mean it can 3 tap, but only against 1 resilience enemy. So very low resilience, which is quite unlikely. Otherwise though, it can actually 1 crit 3 bodies, so 67 plus 45, 45, and 45 totals to 202 damage, which is a 1.3 second kill, which is the normal optimal time to kill, but it means you negate all of the resilience levels. So it can 1 crit 3 body, all resilience levels, instead of raising to a 2 crit 2 body against those using 6 resilience and higher. So what's really great about Rampage is it improves the consistency of this weapon overall. Even if you hit a body shot, just a 50 damage body shot with 1 Rampage stack active, just 1 shot of that with everything else, 1 headshot and the other body shots being normal damage, it can still 1 crit 3 body pretty much all resilience levels, which as I mentioned is more consistent than the other 140 hand cannons. With a Rampage times 2 stack, you can hit 73 damage to the head and then 261s to the head for regular damage for a total of 195, which means you can 3 tap against 4 resilience, which is a little bit more average, so a lot of people run 4 resilience, so this is totally possible to do. And with Rampage times 3, you can hit 79 damage for a headshot, then 61 and 61 again for 201 damage, which allows you to 3-tap any resilience. But again, it's quite a stretch to be reaching Rampage times 3. So that's a bit more of a practical analysis of Rampage. Of course, there are many combinations of damage in between what I showed, so this isn't the be-all and end-all, but it gives you an idea of, at the very least, what Rampage is going to be able to give you, which is the ability to 1 crit 3 body any resilience. So now on the other side of things, we have Opening Shot, which is our other trait perk we have to choose from, which is probably the more underrated one of the two. So what this does, it increases your optimal range by 2 meters, which is great. It drastically increases, though, the precision and ability to hit the first shot of an engagement, especially at range. You can see in the clip here, I tried in the raid just trying to hit headshots on the Cabal super far away, and I was able to with this. So it definitely makes like your opening shot incredibly accurate. I want to say that this slightly increases your airborne accuracy as well, but I don't have any way to quantify this or prove it. I can only say how it feels to me, so you can try it out and see if you find that as well. It resets every 3 seconds, and interestingly enough, stacks with Lucky Pants, which if you're a hunter, you can make your hand cannon pretty darn accurate. So which of these do you choose? I mean, both of them are really good. Both of them in some way affect and improve the consistency of the weapon. Whether it's the opening shot and the range and accuracy and helping you hit your headshot easier in the start of a fight, or the other potentially giving you a better time to kill requirements from engagement to engagement. One could say Rampage is a bit of a roll of the dice because you only have it active for 3.5 seconds and it requires having another player there to engage to use it, which is a little risky. You're not always going to be able to use it, whereas Opening Shot, it might have a little less potential, but it's always active. It's always going to be there to lead an engagement. So in the end, it goes both ways. Now, I know this is a bit of a longer video because we had to break down a bunch of those perks, but we're going to go into our stats and I'll try and make this quick. We have 60 range, maximum of 68, and 77 target acquisition on this hand cannon, 59 stability with 68 max again, and 88 recoil direction, but this recoil direction stat does not reflect arrowhead breaks bonus to it. I don't know why. 57 handling, and then 52 reload. I talked a bit about the stats already with the barrel option, so I'll try not to be too repetitive here. In terms of stability and recoil direction, DFA has pretty great stability. It's got 59, quite similar to the old-fashioned, but it's still beat out by others such as the Allegro Annual Skate and the Dire Promise. But that isn't to say that it's bad. It's a sufficient amount of stability that doesn't feel problematic or intrusive in any way, but it isn't particularly amazing either. There's still a little bit of recoil compensation needed, but it is, again, on the better end of things, especially with how consistent the recoil pattern is. The same to be said of the recoil direction stat itself. It's 88, which is alright and nothing special. Actually on the lower end compared to most other hand cannons, but with arrowhead break, even though it's not represented or changed in the stats at all, it makes the recoil pattern incredibly consistent and vertical, more so than other weapons, despite lacking a better recoil direction stat itself. So overall, although the weapon's stability stats aren't anything amazing, arrowhead break makes recoil incredibly consistent and takes the place of a kinetic recoil mod, except with a bit more effectiveness to free up a mod slot as well. Boosting stability, though, to 72 with polygonal rifling speaks to the versatility of the weapon, being able to compete with other top-tier stability hand cannons like the ones mentioned previously. With polygonal rifling, shots are noticeably more packed together, but much more inconsistent like I mentioned earlier, so I wouldn't use this without a kinetic counterbalance mod, as the mod will help manage the recoil pattern and you'll still get the stability benefit. The same thing applies to extended barrel. It's got a really weird recoil pattern, I think, without a kinetic counterbalance mod, but with a counterbalance mod, it's actually really consistent. It's almost entirely linear, maybe a bit more consistent potentially than arrowhead break, I'm not sure, but it makes it noticeably better. Moving on to range now, damage drop-off started at 30 meters, which is pretty standard, I think. The range is pretty similar to most hand cannons, but just a bit better than hand cannons like the old-fashioned, Dire Promise, Judgment, and Better Devils if you have it spec'd for stability, and even the Midnight Coup. It still doesn't really compare to the ricochet rounds, aka rangefinder hand cannons like Allegro and Jack Queen King, which do punch out of their class, but it's certainly on the better end of the spectrum. To add on to this, damage drop-off started at 32 meters with opening shot, and if you use the extended barrel, you're probably going to get 33 meters. I never noticed significant damage drop-off in the average engagement to make me have to hit more than 1 to 2 headshots, which is the standard, and shot registration was pretty spot on, especially with extended barrel and opening shot, as I mentioned, stacking the range boosts up. DFA is definitely able to be used as a primary ranged weapon, maybe even more so than some other hand cannons, but just as many hand cannons do, it still falls to pulses and scouts at much more extended ranges. Finally, quick talk about handling and reload. Handling on the weapon wasn't unbearable. The swap speed and ADS speed was decent, wasn't anything crazy good, but it was still somewhat worse than other hand cannons, especially with polygonal rifling or extended barrel, which made the weapon feel a bit clunky. New options on the weapon felt particularly responsive or snappy, which perhaps would warrant a handling masterwork. There's not much else to say about the reload though either. I mean, it's sufficient enough and didn't feel like it kept me out of fights for too long. But that being said, draw mag is an option if you really find it a bit slow and don't like it, but I'll never recommend that over accurized rounds. In terms of masterwork suggestions, I would suggest probably handling, like I mentioned. Handling is the only thing that remotely lacks on this weapon, I'd say, so you can make up for it with a handling masterwork. Or, I mean, stability is always a good option. I always recommend this on hand cannons, especially if you're a controller player like myself. Technically, magazine does, with Rampage, let you get an additional kill with this mag, but I mean, I'm not getting into that because that needs insane accuracy and like 100% critical ratio among like 3 engagements, which isn't going to happen really unless you're just a god. So I mean, unless you're a god, don't choose magazine in my opinion. So for me, handling and stability are the main picks that I'd go for. So in conclusion, I don't think this weapon has any sort of crazy lethal ability as much as it does technically have the potential, but I think what makes it so great is how consistent it is. It performs well in every category, again, maybe not extremely well in any specific way, but it performs exceptionally in every stat category that you'd want it to with little trade-off or lacking in any stats, which makes it really reliable and consistent. Arrowhead break adds on to this, giving you that really nice consistent recoil pattern that's manageable, and that leads to you being able to hit shots regularly, more consistently. And other barrel options are good as well, allowing the weapon to really excel and perform better in some areas that it already performs pretty decently in. And finally, you got 2 perks that each in their own way improve the consistency of the weapon, and what you like better is up to you in terms of what you value. DFA is versatile, and you can customize it to how you feel comfortable with it. The name of the game for this weapon is consistency. Whether it's the perks or the exceptional stats, there's very little areas where it lacks, and it constantly has things that improve it to be more consistent. And when you have something that performs good or better than average in pretty much every way, then sometimes just a good weapon could be a really great weapon. So that's my take on the weapon. That's my take on the DFA. Hope you guys enjoyed it. On the side, we're still doing our giveaway. We're giving away the Destiny logo emblem on the 15th. If you guys do want to enter the giveaway, just follow me on Twitch. Links in the description. Leave your Twitch and your Battle.net gamertag or PSN in the comments so I can contact you if you win. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to share your thoughts on the weapon in the comments below if you think it's worth the grind. And as always, it's been Drew here today, and I'll catch you guys later.